What is up, YouTube? HPJ here, and today I want to be coming at you guys with another retro deck profile for the retro deck profile series. And this time we have another Harpie deck to take a look at. So this is from the Mesa, Arizona regionals back in May 2014. In May 2014, this is James Rodriguez's deck. He topped 8 with this variation of Harpie. So like I said in the previous video, retro deck profile that went up, talking about, you know, the amplitude of the decks that are Harpie. Harpie has definitely had one of his best 2 years in 2013, 2014. I'm not even gonna lie. Even with all of the hands that was going around, you know, Artifact, Trap Trick, yeah, Trap Trick Art. I think it was right before. No, this is, yeah, right, literally right before Hat became a thing. And for those who don't know what Hat is, that's hands, artifacts, and trap tricks. So you have Fire and Ice hand, you had the Trap Trick monsters, and the artifacts all in one deck that basically was just a really cohesive deck. But it was so many different things added to it that made the deck so powerful that it gave Harpie a run for its money at the time, because of the fact that, yeah, you can pop off the back row that you want, but unfortunately, due to bullshit situations, yeah, there was a lot that you unfortunately had to go through. So, yeah, that is its thing. But, no, this is honestly a good build of Harpie, if I say so myself. And even all the pieces together. Probably at that time were very expensive, but just more so now is even less expensive than it is. But it is still a good variation of Harpie. So congrats to Mr. Rodriguez for his top 8 place at the event. So with that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at this deck profile, shall we? So starting off with the monsters, he ran 3 copies of Harpie Channeler, 3 copies of Harpie Dancer, 3 copies of Harpie Queen, then 1 copy of Cyber Harpie Lady, 1 copy of Harpie Lady 1 copy of Harpie's Pet Dragon, 1 copy of Zephyros the Elite, and 2 copies of Max C. So that's literally his monster lineup. Now we're going to go on into his spell lineup. So his spells consisted of 3 copies of Hysteric Sign, with 2 copies of Harpie's Hunting Ground, and 1 copy of Elegant Egotist. Then for the rest of the spells, we have 2 copies of Forbidden Lance, 2 copies of Soul Charge, and 1 copy of Book of Moon. So that is it for all of the spells. Now we're going to transcend into the trap lineup. And he ran 3 copies of Hysteric Party, followed by 3 copies of Reckless Greed. Then 2 copies of Magical Hat, 2 copies of Fiendish Chain, 1 Skill Prisoner, 1 Mirror Force, 1 Solemn Warning, and 1 Torrential Tribute. So that is it for all of the trap cards he ran. And then going into the extra deck, which consisted of 2 copies of Lightning Chidori, followed by 1 copy of Ice Beast Zero Fine, 1 copy of Harpie's Pet Phantasmal Dragon, 1 copy of Maestroke the Symphonic Djinn, 1 copy of Queen Dragoon Djinn, 1 copy of Abyss Dweller, 1 copy of Exciton Knight. To fit in for the Black Ship of Corn, I'm putting in a Diamond Direwolf. So, of course, I'll leave a link to the list so you guys can see it, but that's going to be right there. Then, following that up are 2 copies of Gaga Cowboy. And then, so actually, let's properly do it. It should be 2 copies of Gaga Cowboy. Then it's 1 copy of Mecha Fanabeast Draco Sack. Then the number 11 Big Eye. The Black Ship of Corn, because that's number 50. Then number 85 Crazy Box. And then 1 copy of Silent Honor Arc. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the deck itself, with just the inclusion of course, the additional monster to fit in for the Black Ship of Corn. So, let's go ahead and talk about this main deck. So this is a very odd monster lineup, but it is consensual to what most Harpie players were playing at the time. Your standard was always 3 copies of Harpie Channeler, because she is basically the Harpie monster who such summons all of your other Harpies to the field. With Course Dragon, that gives you your rank 7 plays, and most of the time you're just making rank 4 plays thanks to Harpie Channeler. So she is your go-to girl for the deck. She is the one that you make sure that everything follows through. She is the corresponding card to do such. Harpie Dancer, and this is of course during the time where back row was very heavy. So manipulating your Harpie's hunting ground and taking advantage of Harpie Dancer was a definite and prominent thing. Popping multiple back row and then being able to float into things thanks to Harpie Dancer. And even putting out your other Harpie monsters, just so that you can have access to them being on the field as soon as possible. Especially with going, Summon Dancer, Bounce Back, Play Channeler. Yeah, was one of the combos that many of us did, especially because we just wanted to clear out that back row, that nasty, pesky back row. Triple Harpie Queen. She is here to be our 19 beat stick, our searcher for our field spell, and to set up for Hysteric Party, simply for her ability to discard herself to go get Hunting Ground. Now, this is an odd combination of things because I'm going to honestly say that I guess because there's only one Elegant Egotist, he wanted to focus more so on, Harpie Lady wanting Cyber Harpie Lady just being missed inches. Although I'll be honest with you, I at least thrown in one more Harpie Lady one, if that was the case, because you really don't have anything to discard Zephyros off of. But I honestly, yeah, that probably would have just been a third Harpie Lady one. Which, speaking of which, let's talk about Zephyros the Elite. So, Zephyros the Elite is here to just play like Harpie Dancer. It bounces any card while it's in the grave at a cost of 400, but for the overall lineup of things, yeah, this is probably just a monster that you just fall back on if you're like, hey, I have the resources, let's bounce stuff back, let's just, put this onto the board, and then at least we can go into some exceed plays, which has always been the thing with Zephyros. Outside of Black Wings. Then we have Harpie's Pet Dragon. Like I said, one dragon was always needed because you're going for your rank 7 setups. Then Maxi, because everybody's special summoning, and Maxi was always that itch to help out with those scenarios. Alright, so that is it for the Monstars. Let's go ahead and go into the spell cards. Which I have to say, still an interesting build. Actually, I like the spell lineup. I'm not gonna lie. I like the spell lineup a little more than I like the monster lineup, just because I'm like, it's always that ish of that one monster. But everybody's deck of choice and everybody's build of choice is different. So triple hysteric sign, of course, to get your Elegant Egotist from the graveyard and then being our deck and then being able to be something to pop with your Harpie's Hunting Ground in case your opponent runs out of back row. One of the biggest additions to the Harpie lineup, especially next to Channeler. Then Harpie's Hunting Ground to, of course, be your field spell, popping multiple back row and then being able to just float around with different abilities. Elegant Egotist at 1, because of course this was a staple for most Harpie decks. We didn't start playing multiple, I think, till later on, because the consistency of wanting to have multiple monsters and swarm the field didn't become more prevalent with Elegant Egotist. Because I think at this point, Harpies were more so a stun than they were so of the heavy spam that they become as they evolve throughout the years. Especially, towards the later years, once we got Harpist, then we got Feathered Storm, and then all the stuff in, Legendary Duelist Pack Sisters of the Rose. Book of Moon for the interruptions. Soul Charge making its appearance. So Soul Charge was probably just for a pseudo Harpie's Hysteric Party because of the fact that they'll pick up monsters who aren't Harpie as well. At a cost of 1,000 of your life points for each monster that you summon, and on top of that, you can conduct your battle phase. As someone who primarily did use Soul Charge, probably a few years later after, not only did it get hit to 1, but then also because it got cheaper at that point. Soul Charge, in my opinion, is a very broken card that had a lot of broken things done to it. And I can't understand, even to this point of time now, why it had to be changed. No, why it had to be banned, because yeah, this card is legit. It is a legit amazing card. It has a legit setup to itself. It sets up many of things, and most people don't care about battle phase, because if you can produce enough things to burn and do burn damage, Soul Charge is definitely your way to go. And then Forbidden Lance, just to play as a good alternative for defenses, to protect your monsters from a lot of cards, because you still have stuff like Dark Hole, other people's Forbidden Lances, Forbidden Chalices, Book of Moons, and stuff like that. So, alright, that is it for the spells, and now we're going to go ahead into the trap cards. And of course, it would not be a Harpie deck if it did not consist somehow or some way of Hysteric Party. So people question, especially in modern era, why were everyone running triple Hysteric Party? Triple Party was something because of the fact that you had a low monster count of Harpies anyway. But in case you wanted to set up for some free summons and you wanted to see this card's consistency, because remember, there wasn't a lot of draw power like there is consistently now, and even with Max C at a point, you still had a little bit of consistency issues, but Party was basically there to pick up for that consistency issues because, well, let's be real. Hysteric Party was always the card that Harpie players loved because it got all of our Harpies onto the field and then was able to produce massive boards because of it. I'm not gonna lie. It's still to this day one of my favorites, and that's why I run it too. Because it's just the fact that it brings back so many of these Harpies that you'll send to the graveyard for other things, but also just being a way to dominate the board when you start going in for a swarm scenario or you want to go for massive summons, which your exceed monsters. Nowadays, your link monsters and stuff like that. And you just have all these multiple targets. Reckless Greed. I guess we get a little greedy in Harpie, so why not have some more consistency and draw power? While sacrificing 2 of your draw phases, I don't think is an issue. Reckless Greed does tend to help out a lot of decks from time to time. Because some decks just have easy draw power, some decks just have a way to search out for things. So Reckless Greed is just that additional point. And remember, you can chain a Reckless Greed to a Reckless Greed, and the abilities will just continue on as regular Reckless Greeds. Magical Hat. So this is the first time that Magical Hat is appearing in the retro deck profile. And we got to talk about Magical Hat. So for those who don't know, Magical Hat is a normal trap card that basically places two cards from your deck, spells or traps, and then take one of your monsters on the field and you shuffle them. They'll have 0 attack and defense, and they'll be treated as normal monsters, but they're destroyed at the end of the battle phase. So the thing about Magical Hat and what you did with Magical Hat was that you forced your opponent to basically figure out where your monster setup was. And for the reason of what things were, Harpies were the reason why Magical Hat blew up. Because of Hysteric Sign. Yeah, you would Magical Hat out one of your monsters, and you'll set a sign under it, and then you'll probably play something like a Skill Prisoner or a Breakthrough Skill, so that way they can be sent to the graveyard as well. So once your cards get sent to the graveyard, either they're destroyed by a monster or they're popped by an effect, then you would trigger off their effects at the end phase. So you'll have your Breakthrough Skill in the grave, you'll have your Skill Prisoner in the grave for their effects, but then you also have Sign now going off to allow you to get to your other cards. So yeah, it was definitely a lot to the effects of Magical Hats, because this is literally where Magical Hats started popping off, and it was right after it got reprinted, because Yugi's World had did the reprint of it being a common. And yeah, Magical Hats is something that I did not expect Harpie players to want to actually play, but because of how things were fanning out and how a lot of, the game state was, we still had battle phases and we still had things to do with battle phase, but we also wanted to just fuck around with our opponents too. Also, remember, this was the reason why Magical Hat rulings had to be and why people had to change their sleeves for the extra deck to match the same sleeves as the main deck. Or I think they couldn't anymore because it was a whole issue with the main deck extra deck scenario because Harpie players were playing Magical Hat. Yeah. Fiendish Chain for the negation because we weren't running Valor at that time. Skill Prisoner to play around with Magical Hat. Mirror Force and Torrential as some options of monster removal. Funny enough, you can even chain the Torrential Tribute on the Magical Hat, and then it'll destroy your cards. So even then, your cards are going to be sent to the graveyard through an effect. And then Solemn Warning just as that last bit of protection. So that is it basically for the main deck, and then we go into the extra. So, Lightning Chidori, who's always a staple in a Harpie extra deck, sending set cards to the bottom of the deck while also being able to detach a card from itself to then send a face-up card back to the top of the deck to cause even more chaos. Especially because this effect doesn't destroy. It is a great way to get over a lot of immunity effects as well. Ice B0 is fine for her massive negation. Harpie's Pet Phantasmal Dragon as a way to just basically end off the game if needed. And you can go into your hysteric parties and your hysterically party setup into things. Maestroke for her defense. Queen Dragoon Jin to pick up cards for utility. Especially picking up your dragon, because if you lost your dragon through something, you can just pick it right back up and then you go into an exceed play for one of your other 7s in the deck. Dweller to deal with the graveyard, another way of massive removal thanks to Exciton Knight, who was very, very expensive at that time, and if you didn't have an Exciton Knight, there were other options like Rachna Zero. You can play a second Zero fine. You just probably play a lot of bigger things. Because rank 4 engines for any rank 4 deck is just tumultuous. It's just amazing. Because Harpies always had access to a ton of things for their rank 4 engines. Cowboy for the 800 burn, double up. Because, you got a lot of material to make it. Draco Sack was just a typical thing to play in Harpie. If you had the money and resources to go get you another Draco Sack. Because Draco Sack reprints, I don't think happened till later in 2014. So, yeah, because the 10s. So, really at that point, your Mecha Phantom Beast Draco Sack was only really picked up if you could pick up enough of the cards to play it. Otherwise, you're playing Master Blades. Then we have the Dire Wolf that's fitting in for the Black Ship of Corn. For those who are wondering what's up with Black Ship of Corn, he was just basically able to send monsters to the graveyard who had less attack than he did. But I believe he had to detach material and he couldn't attack the turn he activated the effect. Which is perfectly fine. Big Eye is still your opponent's monsters. The Crazy Box. This is a crazy thing. So for those who are wondering why Crazy Box is here, and I'm going to be honest because I was also someone who played Crazy Box. While I don't believe he sided it into his side deck, let me just check to see what Mr. Rodriguez had in his side deck. No, he didn't. So, this is a crazy side deck too. He had 2 Allied Justice versus Cycle Readers, another Maxi, Dark Hole, 2 MSTs, and Harpie's Hunting Ground, 1 Full House, 2 Mind Crush, 2 Overworked, 1 Soul Drain, and 2 Vanity's Emptiness. Yeah, because Emptiness didn't make it into the main deck till later. Mind Crush was still around because of the fact... Well, Mind Crush is still around now. It's just the whole public knowledge thing got changed dramatically. Overworked probably just to mess with monsters who tried to manipulate their level stuff. I'm also looking at it. Yeah, it's just some manipulation things. But I thought the Crazy Box would have been in here, but I think I know why it's still here. It's because other decks at the time... Sorry, there was... oh shit. Okay, sorry about that. There was a fly on my desk. And I have to get rid of it. But, no, there was some issues with some things going on at that time with what was it? Skill Drain. There we go. That's what I was thinking of. Skill Drain. Skill Drain. Sorry. So I'm a little distracted because I have to kill a damn fly and a gnat. Ugh. So, yeah. Skill Drain was a thing. And the Crazy Box just being a big beat stick that level 4 monsters can go into. So I think this was way before Diamond Crab King came out. And what you would do with this monster was it had an ability that you roll the dice. You touch material to roll a dice. And it was either to have your life points to gain a card. No, have your life points. If it was 2, you drew a card. 3, your opponent would discard a card. You would negate the effects of one face-up card on the field until the end of the turn. 5 was that you destroyed one card on the field, and 6 was that you destroyed this card. So if you could negate something on the field, you were negating this. So I guess you could just make it a big beat stick, if anything, because it couldn't attack. Yeah, this card can't attack, but it could do other abilities, and you would hope for basically 4, because in that way you can negate your ability. Negate your monster's effect, and then he can attack. Because it's an effect to not attack. So, with skill drain and stuff going around, this is also a good thing. Because you can just, take advantage of skill drain. And then 101 Silent Honor Arc, because why not? Oh, you know what that